man. So last episode, we left off with a few issues. For starters, Ken and Porsche were both kidnapped. And that on top of the fact that Porsche was supposed to be home on vacation for a week and Ken just will not leave him alone. Then, on top of that, Ken assaulted Porsche and then treated Porsche like complete trash. All of that. We have a lot of mental things we need to assess and we need to discuss those a little bit later. Now, let's see what's going on with the guys in episode 6 of KinnPorsche. The episode starts off with the bodyguards searching in the jungle where Ken and Porsche were last seen. Chorn, the lead of the bodyguards, said that they were to conduct a non-stop search until the two are found, no matter what state they are in. Note, you'll see that they are all looking for Porsche as well. I would have assumed that a bodyguard was just a bodyguard. You know, they got to give their life up for one of the brothers. And that they would have just left Porsche just to look for Ken. But no. I wonder why, and I think it has something to do with the daddy. Then we switch over to Ken and Porsche, who are wandering around in the forest, lost, still handcuffed together, might I add. They are constantly bickering, and rightfully so, given their circumstances. But how they decide things, like which way to travel in the forest, just was completely and absolutely childish. I.e., they play rock, paper, scissors. So they are trying to decide what direction to go look for water, and they are desperately trying to get the handcuffs off. Well, at least one of them is desperately trying to. Eventually, though, these two find water after fearing that they will die of thirst. At the beginning of this episode, they are in two totally separate headspaces. Porsche hates Ken, and especially for all the things that he's done to him. And Ken is still selfishly in love with Porsche, thinks he owns Porsche and the rights to Porsche's body, and he just has the rights to everything about Porsche. That's not okay. And now these two have to depend on each other to survive. What a diabolical universe. The water that they find is like the first step to them kind of mending their relationship. And, you know, water is healing. I believe so in my, beliefs. That water is healing. So, this is the first good sign. They then find an abandoned truck with a few supplies in it and a place to sleep. So while trying to start a fire at night, Ken is struggling and Porsche just watches him struggle and eventually lets in on the fact that he has a lighter. And to be honest, I don't mind that Porsche just sat there and let him struggle for a little while. He thought it was funny. And he was actually on a little bit of get back shit because like Ken kind of deserve it. Like, yeah, you're going to struggle. Even though, Anyway, Porsche is a survivor, okay? And loves watching a spoiled rich kid struggle. I mean, who wouldn't? Especially a spoiled rich kid who's been just like terrorizing you. Yeah, let him struggle. Meanwhile, the search party is still looking for the boys. And y'all see these boys, these men, in all this black, and it just looks so damn fine in their gear. And y'all, I like a little tight shirt, especially a little tight black shirt. Anyway, they think that the Minor family may have had something to do with the kidnapping of, Ken and Porsche. So Chorn has had Pete and Paul staking out where Vegas and his little brother is hanging out. And Paul is, of course, knocked out in a car because, he be sleeping on a job. Let me tell y'all, Paul is not a serious character, okay? He sucks at his job. He's so adorable. But this car scene is so funny to me. So Macau and Vegas know that Pete and Paul are watching them in the car. And, okay, I just love the scene. So let me explain. So Pete and Paul, they lose sight of the brothers, only for Vegas to show up at Pete's window and hand them some food, basically, a bag with food in it. And y'all, these two should be so embarrassed because, like, the people you're supposed to be sneaking around and watching, they know you're there. They're giving you food. They're horrible at a stakeout. But Vegas left a little something extra in the bag. It was a condom. It was a condom. This is actually foreshadowing to Vegas. His finest. I told y'all I like Vegas. And Pete's situation later on in the show. But we're going to get to that later. Vegas comes back to the car to get his condom. And the way he grabs Pete's hand and asks him if, he wants to share the condom. And I only know one way that people... Wait. I know a couple of ways that people can share a condom, and it is not safe for work, okay? Pete better stay far, far away from Vegas. The next morning, Porsche and Ken are trying to eat in the jungle. Porsche is still amusing himself on watching Ken, the little rich spoiled kid, try to survive in the wild. And he's trying to catch a fish with a stick, but he is failing miserably. Meanwhile, Porsche is sitting there eating a wild fruit. Ken asks, Porsche, how do you know that this fruit is edible? Then Porsche, with his childish ass, proceeds to pretend to choke on the fruit like he is being poisoned. And Ken immediately tries to save his baby. He's scared that, Porsche's finna die until Porsche spits out the food onto his face on purpose. Y'all, Porsche jokes too much, okay? But imagine having a dead body attached to you by the arm. That's no. So as mentioned before, Porsche's survival skills are really on point. Also, he pulls out a whole knife. Porsche found a useful knife. He found a few useful things in the car, I think. And Porsche taught Ken how to sharpen the stick and catch a fish for them to eat. They are really actually starting to get along, if you pay attention. Nothing like being stuck in a jungle to make the heart grow fonder. So, while they eat, they chat. Porsche noticed that Ken hadn't stopped smiling the whole time they had been out in the forest. And more importantly, away from civilization and away from the gang. Porsche deduces Ken smiling, and he says, it's because you don't have to act like a hard ass all the time in front of anyone. Which is actually true because remember a few episodes back, Ken said he don't like dealing with running a family business. Basically, he has no outlet. Well, now being away from everything is the outlet. He has a break and an escape from that world finally, and now he can express his happiness, his true self, even though it's a fucking sucky survival situation. And to be honest, at first when I first watched this, I was kind of wondering if Ken was the one who did this on purpose. But he didn't. Then the next scene, you see Ken and Porsche swimming in a little stream with a cute little waterfall next to them, mostly naked. They're in their underwear, okay? They are cold. They are hugging each other and such a beautiful scenery. Then they look into each other's eyes and they kiss. To be honest, it's really a beautiful kiss. As short as it is, it's so sweet and so tender, and it's a layered kiss, okay? But surprisingly, it is Ken who pulls away from Porsche. Could it be his guilt? Ken was looking really guilty, and he knows what he did to Porsche. And it is Porsche who actually looks a little bit disappointed that they stopped the kiss. Then we learned that Ken's penis may be bigger than Porsche's penis. And how we know this? Because Ken was looking at Porsche take a pee. But he should have known that already. Anyway, that's besides the point. And, well, Porsche didn't really argue either. So that's why I'm kind of thinking is true. Also, in that drugged out night in the hotel, Porsche knew what he felt. By the way, while Porsche is taking a pee, they also look a little bit further down in the grass and they see a skeleton of a dead body, and Porsche is freaked the fuck out. When they get back to their campfire, we get a glimpse of how Ken sees Porsche. He says he never realized that Porsche could be scared of something. Because Porsche was scared of that little ghost. Well, not a ghost, but the skeleton. Ken sees Porsche as fearless, someone who is so brave, someone who marches to his own drum and do what he want to do. So this little inkling of just fragility, it must have sparked something in Ken. Then Ken begins to ask sweet little questions, wanted to know more about Porsche. Porsche says he wants to open a beach bar just like him and Porsche should have done at the beginning of the story, and they wouldn't be in this mess. But like I said, no one listens to me. Porsche in return asks what Ken wants. Then Porsche mentions something interesting. He reminds us that Ken is the middle child. He had to have a dream before he had to take over the family business. Because if Takun is the oldest, he should have been the one taking over the business, really. But he fiend crazy, and Ken was up next. Ken was hesitant to tell Porsche his dream. Also, this shows Ken's reluctance to be vulnerable back, as a mobster should be. But he is willing to be vulnerable with Porsche. He tells Porsche not to laugh. Then he explains to Porsche what his dream was. It was to be a singer. And Porsche was a little surprised, but then he was like, you know what? Sing something for me. Since you want to be a singer, sing something. And tell me why Porsche burst out laughing once Ken starts to sing it. I'm like, he is diabolical. Like, that's what Ken gets though, y'all. And maybe that has something to do with Ken and his brother Kim not seeing each other in a while. Kim gets to live out his dream as being a singer. Yeah, I've caught that while watching the story. Anyway, which brings us to our next point. Ken says while staring longingly into the distance, maybe Takun plays crazy so that he wouldn't have to take over the family business. Now that is a thought. Porsche says that he could believe it. And y'all, Ken is being so vulnerable right now. He even says he wishes he could take back the things he did wrong to Porsche. In general. Porsche is caught a little bit off guard again, but he forgives him. And they fist bump it out. Just fist bump it out. Woo, child. The next morning, you can see that Ken is even more in love with Porsche. Look at how he is staring at him so tenderly while Porsche is falling asleep. He is so happy that Porsche forgives him, and you can tell. Even though they didn't specifically talk about that instance. So they're out and about on their day, and then suddenly Ken hears people calling out for them. They have to jump this cliff to get to the other side, to get to the voices. But as they attempt to jump the cliff together, because remember, they're still handcuffed, they miss the ledge and they fall down into a hole. Meanwhile, with the cuffs still on, it's really hard for them to climb out of this pit that they fall in. So while they're sitting in this hole, Ken is like, what if you and I don't go back at all? I can be free and I can be myself once again. And remember I said that's why I thought Ken did this on purpose. Anyway, then Ken specifically apologizes for that night. The night he took the booty. Bringing it up directly instead of generally like he did the night before. He says he never ever had crossed that line with a bodyguard before. Pause. Okay, so is it me? Or must Ken be in Wonderland? Yeah, I understand, like, running a family business must be, like, tough. I get it. Especially, like, a freaking mob. But who do he be in Wonderland with all them fine men around him and him being gay and just having a bunch of fine men? I would. I think there's a little give and take in running the mafia again. Yeah, I might lose my life any day, but at least the days I'm living, I get beautiful sights. Let me continue on. Porsche said no one had ever crossed that line but him either, meaning that no one had ever taken advantage of him while he was just out of it. Ken then specifically asked for forgiveness for sexually assaulting Porsche. Porsche said that he forgave him a long time ago, and that's pretty sweet. That's nice. Then Porsche is like, I know how to get us out of this pit. One of us needs to cut off our hands. And Ken is just smirking at him. Okay? He's just like smirking. Like, why are you smirking? So they got to pick who gets their arm cut off. And guess what method they use? Again, rock, paper, scissors. They just rock, paper, scissors it out. Because that's what you do when there's hard life decisions. And Porsche loses again because he sucks at rock, paper, scissors. So Porsche is the one who has to cut off his hand. So Porsche decides to prepare to cut off his hand, and Ken, when he's about to stab the hand to cut it, uses the knife instead to open the handcuffs. Ken's whole family knows how to get out of handcuffs. Porsche is so annoyed, y'all. He is like, Ken, you really had me tied up for you for days. And Ken as did that on purpose. Y'all know that. Just to stay close with his Porsche. How diabolical. Once they're out of the hole, Ken tells Porsche to leave. You get to go get your brother Porsche and go to the beach and open up your bar. And Porsche does. He leaves Ken, he leaves the bodyguards behind, and he lives happily ever after on a beach with just him and Porsche, like I've been telling them to do this whole time. The end. Just kidding. Y'all know no one ever listens to me, right? So they get into a shootout after kissing for a really, really long time. And Ken's little crying face, y'all, is so cute, might I add. Just look at his little crying face. Then, in the last few minutes of the show, Ken gets shot protecting Porsche. What poetic justice.